Welcome to Workplace Conversations. Real people, real stories, real workplaces.
Hi and welcome to AIMWA's podcast, Workplace Conversations. I'm Sandra Holloway, Chief Customer Officer here at AIMWA, and today I'm joined by Dr Jennie Gray, CEO of Women's Legal Service WA. Jennie, welcome. It's great to have you here.
Hi Sandra, thanks for inviting me.
No problems. Now, we had you on one of our conference panels earlier in the year, and you were talking around women's legal service and trauma-informed workplaces. And when we were going through the feedback, that was something that most people wanted to know more about, and they gave you accolades for the way you spoke. So it's one of the reasons we wanted you back. We wanted you here today to talk through that. But there is a whole other background to you, Jennie, your career and what you deal with on a day-to-day basis. So we really wanted to delve more deeply into yourself, your career, and get some inspiration from you, and also talk about women's legal service and what they do in the community and some of the challenges you face there as you know, in a workplace, I guess, as a CEO. So can you give us a little bit of background about you and your career?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. And the conversation sounds great. So I actually began studying business.
Okay.
So
didn't know that.
I am with a major in economics and finance and marketing, and actually my first job was as a marketing manager for a fashion company.
Oh, which fashion company?
Skid Row's.
Yeah.
So for those who know,
Yep.
Yeah, North Fremantle in the city. So that was a really a fun time in my life, but it didn't take me long to work out that actually I wanted to do something that contributed more to, I guess, social justice and the community as a whole. And that realisation came about when I was travelling. Yeah. And I studied social work. Okay. And so I am a social worker by trade, and I have many years practising primarily, I guess my social work began and has been centred around working with women, whether those women live with gendered violence, which I know we're going to talk about, or mental health issues. Yes. And my research has also been in those areas. So I undertook an honours project, and then as an extension of that I did my PhD. And I studied in the area of what it means for women to live with a psychiatric label, but a big psychiatric label, I call them, like schizophrenia or bipolar affective disorder. No surprises there what that means for women. Yes. That label follows them around everywhere. But really I researched with the women, not for the women. Yep. And what that research evolved to become was thinking about how we tell stories of self in a way that's safe to tell and safe also for someone else to hear. And I guess that was the beginning of my sort of, light bulb moment about what it means to live with trauma, and also what it means to share those stories of trauma with other people in a way that's safe for them to hear.
I can almost see the marketing storytelling piece coming into your social justice career. Yeah.
And I guess the other thing to note is that I lived for 10 years in the Kimberley and Broome, and I managed services in the Kimberley and the Pilbara. Yeah. And so that really gave me a great understanding of what it means to deliver services in regional and remote areas, and also how to partner effectively with Aboriginal services and communities.
Yeah, wow, Jennie, it's a broad career, marketing to CEO of Women's Legal Service. Yes. So from that, let's segue into what Women's Legal Service actually does.
Yeah, so I'm the CEO of Women's Legal Service, and Women's Legal Service is a specialist community legal centre that delivers what we call socio-legal assistance at the intersect of the complex legal issues that tend to be more unique to women. Okay. So that's in the area of family violence, family law, criminal injuries compensation, protection and care, sexual violence, and working women. So the issues that we associate more with women because of gender stereotypes, really, and gendered inequality and gendered violence.
I think this is one of the questions you always get, isn't it? Why do women need a legal service for them?
Yeah. So because women have unique needs, women need to have a specialist response to meet those unique needs, and an organisation like Women's Legal Service is particularly well placed with our experience and our expertise to respond to women's unique needs.
Yeah.
We don't just respond to her legal needs. We recognise when she walks through the door that she's not just coming with legal issues, but a bunch of other issues that are impacting her well-being, whether that's financial hardship, housing insecurity, mental health issues.
Yes.
So we aim to respond in the context of her whole life. So in addition to lawyers, we have social workers and financial counsellors as well.
And you have partnerships with people that wrap around services.
Yeah, so we deliver services around the state, and lots of those services we deliver in partnership, particularly with other women's health centres.
Yeah.
So we're really aiming to make sure that she can access legal assistance in a continuum or suite of other services that are going to help address and improve her wellbeing as well.
So what are some of the barriers a woman might face when they're trying to access justice or access legal advice?
I think there are so many barriers in the system that are stacked up against women. It's kind of hard to know where to start, really. I mean, if we look, there's actual, policy barriers, then there's legislative barriers, and there's cultural barriers as well.
Yeah.
We look at the what's very common in the media is the frequency with which women are misidentified as the primary perpetrator in family and domestic violence.
Yes.
Because those first responders, often police, don't believe the woman.
Right.
They're more likely to believe a man who's presenting as someone like them,
Yes.
someone who's calm and coherent and hasn't just been the victim of, for example, a physical assault. And in those set of circumstances, we see very often that she's the one who is given a violence restraining order.
Yes.
So that's a cultural barrier that they face. They face legislative barriers, not the balance of probability, but beyond reasonable doubt in court cases
Yes.
where there's sexual violence.
Yes.
And she has to prove beyond reasonable doubt that an assault happened to her. She's the primary witness in a case where there's no other witnesses.
Yes.
There's no CCTV. It's his word versus her word. And he doesn't have to even give his word. So someone, an alleged perpetrator in a case, doesn't have to give evidence. They've got the right to silence.
Yes.
And that silence can't be used to confer any kind of guilt, admission of guilt. And yet she has to give evidence. And we've seen time and time again in the media where it's her evidence or her witness statement that's pulled apart by an adversarial lawyer and designed to trip her up.
Yes.
Was it Tuesday or Wednesday? Was it
Yes.
4 or 5 o'clock?
Yeah.
And we've also seen those very rare occasions where the alleged perpetrator has had to give evidence and exactly the same thing happens to him.
Yes. You think it's changing?
I think there's growing awareness in the community, absolutely, and I think that's something that we can be hopeful about. What we need is legislative and policy change that keeps up with changing community attitudes.
Yeah. So when you and the team are working, what do you view as a success, I guess?
Look, we have lots of successes, and we really, in an organisation like Women's Legal Service, we really make sure that we celebrate those successes.
Yeah.
So we share good news stories at the end of every week, Friday,
That's nice.
via email. I collate them and I share them. And so mostly they're around wins in court. They're around, for example, where a magistrate or a judge recognises the impact of coercive control. We don't often see that, but we have seen that recently where that has been articulated, and we really applaud those magistrates who recognise coercive control. We see, we celebrate when our financial counsellor assists in getting a debt waived for a woman. We celebrate when the social worker assists in a woman accessing a house or getting on the priority list for public housing.
Yes.
We celebrate when we have a win in legislation or reform when, for example, recently in the federal budget, we saw that the government chose to invest very heavily in measures to address the use of child support as a form of economic abuse. And so, the wins are local and national and global.
Yes, and they're coming a little bit more frequently, I feel.
Yeah, I think you absolutely coming more frequently. I guess the challenge that we all face is the influence of the online manosphere.
Yeah.
And the impact that that's having, particularly on young men's attitudes towards women.
Yeah.
We have wins on one hand and we have
Yes.
challenges on the other.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you are often brought in to speak to media around what is going on in this space. I've seen quite a few interviews that you've done, and I know that you're usually the first port of call if there is a story that needs to be told. How do you balance that? So, we're dealing with confidentiality, we're dealing with funding, we're dealing with a whole host of issues. So how do you balance all that when you're speaking out?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I think as in the position that I am in, I do have a personal and ethical obligation to collectivise the stories that I hear and make them, de-identify them and elevate them to the point at which we can use them to educate the public and raise consciousness about some of the impacts of gendered violence on women in particular. And that is a real driver for me to make sure those stories are out there. And also, often in the media it's about the injustices that women experience more often than what we're celebrating.
Yeah.
But we, as you said, I have a duty to make sure that the safety of women is preserved and that no way any identifying details can be disclosed to the media. Sometimes women opt to have their story in the public arena, and I can comment on that when they choose to do it. I can think of another circumstance where I worked with the team as a decoy to get Channel 10 away from the front of a courthouse when all of the victim survivors from a trial where there were multiple victim survivors coming out of the court, and the media was trying to, grab them as they came, and I said, I'll talk to you over here, and over in a cafe out of sight of the entrance or the exit of the court.
Done.
And then the women, and it was when the conviction was read out, and so the women who wanted to be there were there to hear that he actually had been found guilty of 98 of 100 charges.
Wow.
So that was a real celebration, but at the same time the women didn't want to be harassed by the media. So
you headed to the cafe.
Yeah.
Well done. That's excellent. Now, can we just talk about funding for a second? How are you funded? And I think I've got some questions around how you look at each case and decide which case to take on, because I know that you have limited resources, and how many women you're turning away, which I know is a great number.
Yeah, sure. So our funding is a combination of government funding, state and national government funding, philanthropic funding, corporate funding, and little bits of pieces here and there for project funding that come from a variety of sources. You're absolutely right. Our level of funding does not match the scale of the need that we have for our service. So we often find we are stretched beyond our capacity, but we have mechanisms to filter and make sure that those women who come to us who have the greatest level of need, whether they're in a crisis situation or their safety is, they're at immediate threat of their safety being compromised, we will have a way to see them straight away. We have filters to try and divert women where we can to other services, perhaps where their needs not so urgent, perhaps where they have a higher income.
Yes.
So we have income limits, and we use other criteria to assess the woman's vulnerability, where we'll waive the income criteria, and that is where she's experienced, again, when she's at imminent risk, where she might be from a culturally and linguistically diverse background, she might live with a disability, she might be homeless, she might be from a remote area. So we factor all those things in when we're assessing who we will support. But we do turn away in the vicinity of about 50 women a week.
Wow.
Yeah. And most of our referrals are self-referrals, so women find us by Googling. And that's where we don't have the capacity because we just simply can't fit the women in. And sometimes we don't have, it's not our area of law.
Yes.
So we can't assist. And other times it's because she might have a court matter tomorrow and we actually haven't got anyone available. So we have different categories and we look at that data to understand why we're turning away women and how we might be able to better triage those women who we are turning away.
Yeah. So do you want to do a shameless funding plug?
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. And you are one of our biggest champions too, Sandra. So absolutely. We have a fundraising and engagement manager, partnerships manager, and she is really fantastic at looking at all those opportunities to for funding to augment our service to improve outcomes for women.
Yeah, I know, and I know that the funding limitations. While the government funds you, you've got great partners now. You're always looking for partners to help.
Absolutely.
Fund different services, or even just untied funds that can help you
Yeah.
buy a new computer for a lawyer that needs one, or that sort of stuff. So
yeah, that's a good point. So our funding rarely stretches to computers or mobile phones that we absolutely need. And the untied funding that we do get through our various donations, we use that to assist women with emergency relief. So those kind of things that our funding doesn't cover that help them to improve their safety immediately. So whether that's phone credit, in some cases a new phone. Helping them with transport, helping them with moving costs, helping them, occasionally with accommodation overnight. On a few instances, we've helped with airfares when women have had no other means to travel to for a recovery order to take, unbelievably, to take their child back.
Yeah. Wow. All right. So let's talk about family and gendered violence as a workplace issue. So I guess one of the things I think people want to hear about, or that there is confusion around, is how does obviously gendered violence turns up in all workplaces. It's not an issue that is limited to certain sectors of society. So I guess the first thing is, how does it affect a workplace, or how does it affect productivity? How I think people see it as family, workplace is workplace, but obviously, those two worlds come together. So how does it affect a workplace?
It affects a workplace in lots of different ways, and I guess the level of impact that family and domestic violence has on a workplace depends also on the workplace's response to that issue. At Women's Legal Service, one of the programs we run is Working Women's Centre.
Yeah.
So that's in partnership with another community legal centre called Circle Green.
Yeah.
And what we're doing in the Working Women's Centre is supporting women who experience abuse, discrimination and harassment in the workplace and beyond.
Yeah.
And one of the most common issues that women come to us about is the intersect or the impact of intimate partner violence on them in the workplace.
Yes.
And so they find that we hear that women are discriminated against despite legislation that requires employers to give family and domestic violence leave to victim survivors of intimate partner violence. We find that lots of women who come to us for different reasons find barriers in the workplace to disclosing the violence and getting support for the violence that they are experiencing. And many examples where we're surprised to hear that this is actually not happening, and it is, like I said, one of the most common issues that women are coming to us about. So it affects their ability to do their work. So often the perpetrator, we hear stories about where the perpetrator will intentionally sabotage their employment.
Wow.
Like, I've heard stories where, he prevents her from going to work, so she's absent from work, so that affects the workplace, where he has got her drunk the night before, so she performs poorly in the workplace the next day. I heard a story about where a perpetrator rang the police and said that she was driving to work under the influence and gave her number plate, so she was picked up and breathalyzed. She wasn't, but she missed a really important appointment that he knew that she had, spreading rumours in the workplace, making complaints about her to the workplace, so many different ways that he is impacting her working relationships and her employment because of that coercive and controlling relationship that they have.
So I guess let's start with what are the legal requirements?
So
in a workplace, how are you supposed to respond legally?
So legally, under the national employment standards, all employers have to give up to 10 days of paid
Yes.
domestic violence leave every year.
Okay.
That leave's not accruable, but it starts from the moment that the employee starts in the workplace.
Okay.
And that leave is to allow the victim to attend things that they need to during work hours that they can't do outside of work hours. So it could be to attend court,
Yeah.
could be to attend an appointment with one of the lawyers at Women's Legal Service, could be to attend a counsellor, could be to move house.
Yeah.
Sometimes an employer will require evidence of that, which is pretty easy to gather.
Yeah.
And sometimes they don't. But that's the legal requirement in Australia now.
Okay. And what do you think the best practice is?
I guess the stories that we hear in the Working Women's Centre is that women are often reluctant to disclose that they're experiencing violence for the shame.
Yes.
Like it's just not something, or the stigma, it's not talked about in the workplace.
Yes.
It's not something that's visible. The policy is not
Yeah.
known to the woman, and I say woman,
Yes.
sometimes it's men, but
Yes.
it is invariably women who do need this kind of support and leave. She might feel reluctant. In addition to the shame and stigma, her line manager might be a man.
Yes.
And so she might not want to report to him because, he might be a perpetrator, or she
Yeah.
feels, additional shame because he's a man, or she doesn't feel safe. She also... So good practice is making those policies visible, making family and domestic violence a workplace issue, not a personal issue.
Okay.
There is nothing to be, individually embarrassed about. This affects so many, particularly women,
Yeah.
across Australia and in fact across the world, that it is a health, economic and social problem, not an individual problem.
Yes.
We need employers to be part of the safety planning.
Yes. Yeah.
So we hear when they're often not
Yep.
part of the safety planning, they're reluctant to be part of the safety planning. They don't want to be involved. They still see it as a personal issue,
Yes.
not something to support her. So ways in which she could be supported in her safety planning is changing her phone number, her work phone number, her work email address,
Yes.
things like that, preventing him from coming to the workplace. That's how an employer could be part of the safety planning. They could also, believe her.
Yeah.
I always forget to say that. We could start with believing
I think
her.
that's number one.
Yeah,
right?
I think it's number one, right? Believing her.
Yeah.
And, back on the first line responders, if we believe her, then we're, for lots of women, they aren't believed when they first disclosed.
I don't know if you have them on top of your head, off the top of your head, Jenny,
Yeah.
but what's the stats around family and domestic violence or family violence?
Yeah. Look, we know it's somewhere between 1 in 3 and 1 in
Okay.
4 women live with, emotional abuse and physical abuse from the age of 15. And I can't recall what the ratio is for men.
Okay.
It's about 3 times that.
Yeah.
And so that when we kind of add it up, that's hundreds of thousands of women
Yeah.
in Australia who are experiencing or have experienced some kind of intimate partner violence.
So from a workplace productivity point
Yeah.
of view, you could imagine that
Yeah.
would have a huge impact
Huge. Yeah.
on the workforce.
Yeah, huge impact on the workforce, and I guess the impact it has depends on the individual workplace.
Yeah.
But we know that there are estimates that the impact of intimate partner violence can cost the Australian economy up to 2% of our gross domestic product.
Wow.
So that's when we think about, lost employment opportunities, lost education opportunities, lower income, increased payments, social security payments,
Yes.
insecure housing. So we have, direct and indirect costs, and then, costs in our health system.
Yeah.
And then in the longer term, the impact on children, and across generations.
Yes.
And the ongoing cost of the experience of trauma that they have encountered because of that violence as well. So, the cost is kind of hard to calculate, but at the same time, it has been calculated by
Yeah.
many,
Yeah.
national research bodies that have said it is a significant cost.
It's a significant cost. So if there's one message that you could give HR and people and culture
Yeah.
teams if someone was disclosing or they suspected
Yeah.
that someone was experiencing family violence or gendered violence, what would you say?
Well, I think we could go back to the believe
Yeah.
as a starting point, but we can make sure that that victim survivor is supported in the workplace, and
Yeah.
that the workplace has responses that make it better for her.
Yeah.
And I know we're going to talk a little bit about our trauma-informed
Yes,
work
we
at
will,
Women's
yeah.
Legal Service. But, you know, understanding what trauma looks like and how trauma presents.
Yeah.
And trauma presents in all different ways in workplaces. And sometimes our own biases about what we think a victim looks like might creep in. And we
Absolutely.
know that victims look different and that their response to trauma is different and unique to them. And so we need to understand that, need to support their version of what is happening to them.
Yes.
And whatever, you know, we need to be person-centred and
Yeah.
understand that we need to be led by what they need in the workplace.
I think that's actually what I was going to ask you is beyond the compliance,
Yeah.
what does good support look like? So I think
Yeah.
that's what you're saying, person-centred support.
Yeah, person-centred, it means being flexible.
Yes.
It means being adaptable.
Yeah.
It means being, you know, hopefully in a workplace, a victim survivor of family violence can disclose it early enough
Yeah.
that we can support early enough and prevent some of those longer term costs and consequences that we were just talking about.
Yes.
It means providing them with access to the counselling services and the other therapeutic supports that they might have. And most employers have access to, you know, EAP now. So making that readily available, again, not personalising this, but recognising that this is a problem that impacts many people in the workplace. And if we look at the average workplace and we do a head count,
Yeah.
you know, we're looking at, you know, 30%
Yeah. Okay.
of,
Wow.
of when we're talking about women.
Yeah. 30% of women in a workplace.
In a workplace. So, yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. And I guess making it safe to talk about it,
Yeah.
you know, that it's an okay thing to disclose.
So if someone suspects that someone is experiencing this in a workplace, what would you recommend? How would you recommend it's dealt with? It's a really tricky one.
It's a really tricky one. And at Women's Legal Service, we have, as part of our intake and assessment process, we have a cheat sheet for our client service officers about how to check in about whether women are experiencing intimate partner violence. And so rather than just saying, are you experiencing intimate partner violence, we might say, lots of the women who come here experience this and this. Do you think any of those things might apply to you? You know, somehow making it not about them, but connecting them with a larger story and understanding that they are not alone.
Yeah.
I think that that's really critical in how we talk to women and victim survivors of intimate partner violence, understanding that their experience is, while it's unique to them, this experience of violence is shared across many people. And because of the nature of a coercive and controlling dynamic, many victim survivors don't really know that their experience is actually replicated everywhere.
Yeah.
They think it's unique to them. And it's just so, I guess, a good news story is when women understand that this story that is happening to them when they come to Women's Legal Service is in fact something that is shared across many women. Many women experience this kind of violence and the same pattern of violence as well.
It is almost like, I know that I've seen some of those cheat sheets and it is almost like textbook.
Yeah. It is the cycle of violence is textbook.
Yeah.
I think, so we have, I guess, we have a so-called honeymoon phase where after an explosion or usually, you know, a physical assault, there will be remorse, regret and promise that it will never, ever, ever happen again. And, of course, anyone who's a victim of violence wants to believe that, right? Of course, we want to keep our family intact.
Yes.
We don't want to have to move house.
Yes.
We want to make sure that our children, if possible, can have access to both parents at the same time.
And even harder, they probably still love the perpetrator.
And they still love the perpetrator. So many women say, well, you know, I still love him. I just want the violence to stop.
Exactly.
But this cycle, and so many women are really enlightened to learn that this cycle that they have experienced is actually very common. And research shows that it takes on average 7 times for a woman to leave a violent relationship. And this cycle, combined with the coercive and controlling dynamic that's designed to isolate her, makes it really hard to leave, on top of the $18,000 on average that it costs to leave a relationship.
Yeah. Do you think there needs to be more education for people and culture teams or HR teams or leaders within workplaces around those signs and how to have those conversations?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, and as I was talking before about our Working Women's Centre, that is part of our work. We're only a very small program,
Sure.
but, Working Women's Centres were established around Australia specifically for that reason.
Yeah.
And we find some groups of employers are especially receptive
Yes.
to wanting to increase their capacity and capability to respond.
Yeah.
And some other industries perhaps less so.
Less so, yeah. So if someone listening wants to be educated.
Yeah, no, absolutely. They can come to us at the Working Women's Centre.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
Excellent. So I guess on that, we've covered the impact of gendered violence in the workplace, but I think one of the things we wanted to unpack is that you're leading an organisation where people are exposed to trauma every day. If you're dealing with that on a day-to-day basis, how does it impact your workplace over time?
Well, it impacts it a lot. And I often say that, a workplace like Women's Legal Service is slammed with trauma.
Yes.
Slammed from the get-go, from the woman when she rings up and, she talks to an admin assistant and the woman's never had the opportunity to tell her story before and she hears someone who's receptive to it and someone who's compassionate. And so she might reveal quite a lot of her story to someone who might not have had the background or the training to cope with hearing that story. That doesn't just apply to our admin team, it also applies to our lawyers.
Yes, that's...
Yeah, so there's no trauma training in law school.
Yes.
And so many lawyers come to an organisation like Women's Legal Service very ill prepared for the stories that they are going to hear.
Okay.
As I said before, I'm a social worker by trade. Social worker probably incorporates a bit more of that trauma training in our course and understands what we need to do for self-care. But as a social worker, I can say, or a social worker can say, look, you're telling me a story that's distressing to you.
Yes.
I can see that. Let's not talk about that now. Let's talk about that next time.
Right.
A lawyer has to say, no, tell me more. Tell me the details.
Yes.
Tell me when that happened. Tell me exactly what happened. So it's not just the trauma that the client has from having to share the intimate details of her story. It's also the impact on the lawyer who has to hear those stories.
Yes.
And so we recognised the need to embed a trauma framework that supports not just the clients but the staff as well.
Yeah.
And so we co-designed a framework with the team. And there's some aspects of that framework that have really been key in, I guess, developing a safer workplace. And one of them is we have supervision groups.
Okay.
And so those supervision groups are a bit like debriefing, and they meet monthly, and they are facilitated by a person who's external to our organisation.
Okay.
The composition of those supervision groups is purposely chosen to make sure there's no line reports in those, so people are free to talk about what they need to talk about, and also across disciplines within the organisation. So we have the admin and the lawyer and the social worker in one group. So it's an opportunity to build safety through new relationships across the team as well, people you might not usually work with. The agenda or the topic of discussion in each of those supervision groups that have been going for about 18 months varies according to those, to what the members want. As an offshoot of the supervision groups is that the supervision groups rotate through the kitchen roster now.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's been a really, an unexpected great outcome. So the groups are taking responsibility of the kitchen roster, and the kitchen is always a flashpoint in any workplace.
Yes,
Yep.
Absolutely
So they are taking responsibility for that. The other things in our framework are that we have trauma-free zones.
Yes.
Not allowed to talk about, some of these, very distressing stories at the lunchroom table, around the photocopier, in the kitchen, because we don't know if other people want to hear them. We don't know if other people, especially working in a workplace where there's only women, have had those experiences themselves and might be triggered from hearing an experience that's very similar to them. We also have, rules around going and dumping on your colleague, right?
Yeah.
So we say you can't just go and do that. You need to check in if they're ready to hear the story.
Check in first, yep.
And we need to say, set aside the time to do that and give them the heads up about what we might be talking about.
Okay.
So again, it's that kind of reciprocal relationship, not just the person who's heard the story in the first instance, but the person who has to hear the story again, and how they are positioned to respond to that.
So this was one of the things that came up at the conference,
Yeah.
and everyone wanted to know more around this.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to recap. You've got supervision groups that are created by people that don't necessarily work together
Yes.
and across disciplines, and an external facilitator runs those.
Yes.
Okay. What sort of external facilitator?
So
what sort of skill?
so she's I think she's a psychologist by trade.
Yes.
Very well regarded in the sector. Is a CEO of another organisation that delivers trauma responses to children who have been sexually abused.
Okay.
And so, very well equipped. She wasn't the consultant that we got to help us design the framework as well, but she's safe.
She's safe. So
Safe.
you've got your supervision groups, and even the extension of that is they've all taken responsibility for cleaning the kitchen, and bonding through those processes. You have your trauma-free zones in the office, so there are places that you can't speak about anything traumatic or bring those subjects up. And then you have to check in first with a colleague before you actually speak about something that could be could have a trigger, and ensure that they're okay to receive that information. And if they aren't, see if they can create a time and let them know what they're speaking about. That's really good.
So we also have trauma training.
Yes.
So we have different kinds of trauma training.
Yeah.
So for our front line staff, the ones who take at reception.
Yeah.
So we have training for them to understand really importantly, what trauma can look like. And I'll often say when I hear a story about, a woman and say she's been really angry at court or she's yelled at the magistrate, I'll say, that's trauma talking.
Yeah.
Because, trauma can manifest in all different ways. So really understanding what trauma talking looks like when someone comes in. They might be super angry. They might be so distressed that they're, and that's quite common as well, and very sad that a woman is crying so much she can't disclose why she's there. We might have trauma can look like someone who freezes, who can't say anything.
Yes.
Trauma looks like fawning, and agreeing with the perpetrator.
Yeah.
And another one that I've taken credit for recently, following the F theme, is fibbing.
Yes.
And so we see that in the case of Brittany Higgins, Justice Michael Lee said that her recounting of her story wasn't a deliberate falsification, but just the impact of trauma and what trauma does, and that she wasn't lying.
And so you have a team dealing with this, like the trauma of your clients every day. So someone on reception could be sitting there and receiving the anger, and then having to get on with their day.
Yeah, so I think the thing is when you can objectify it and understand it's trauma talking, then that changes quite a lot, right? It's not personal. Someone's not personally attacking me or someone's not personally upset that they aren't getting the response that they wanted from me. That really helps contextualise women's presentations at Women's Legal Service. We also give that frontline staff skills with how to de-escalate scenarios. So that's really important as well, which, gives them the confidence, I guess, to manage situations, that they might not, have imagined yet that they're going to be presented with. We also give trauma training across the organisation in different, discipline areas, I guess. So our social workers probably have more in-depth sort of therapeutic responses to trauma. Our lawyers have somewhere in the middle of those two other sort of trainings that I've just talked about. The other thing we have is a self-care checklist.
Yes.
So if you start with us, on week 6 we have a reminder to ask you to fill out your self-care checklist.
Okay.
So we don't want to bombard you with that on the day that it starts.
No.
Right? But you have a responsibility to fill that self-care checklist in, and that is your self-care checklist. You don't have to disclose it to your line manager, but we need to know that you've done that.
Yes.
And in doing that, we are really conveying that your self-care is your responsibility. And
Yes.
if something's not going well, you need to tell us.
Yes.
So that's, again, like the scenario I just talked about, where someone in the workplace might be triggered because the story they hear might be very similar to their own story,
Yes.
for example.
Yeah.
So we need to know that, or we need to know when they actually, for example, can't cope with the number of cases they've got, when they're particularly complex, for example,
Yeah.
you know, all different sets of circumstances, but it's the responsibility of the person to let us know as well. So it's a shared responsibility.
It's a shared responsibility. Yeah. I think that's really great, because I think, you know, some people, some organisations struggle to know where the responsibility starts and where it ends. So the fact that you are actually communicating this is your self-care is your responsibility, but we are here to support with whatever you need if you let us know what you need.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
great.
Yeah.
So the other thing, I guess, is in your organisation, because of the level of trauma and because of the stories people hear, I know that the turnover can be relatively, frequent. I guess. How do you deal with that?
Yeah. So the turnover is frequent for a number of reasons, but less frequent at Women's Legal Service than it is at other community legal centres.
Okay.
And I think that that's an indication of some of those things we have put in place, like we've just talked about. We also have employment terms and conditions that allow, particularly for women.
Yeah.
So we have additional wellbeing leave. We have flexible working arrangements. We can work from home. We allow women to vary their day according to, you know, if they have needs around their children.
Yes.
In particular.
Yeah.
We make sure that we remunerate at the highest level that we possibly can.
Yes.
You know, that doesn't compete with government. So we put these things in place to make our workplace safe.
Yeah.
And for employees to feel valued.
Yes.
And to have particular policies and procedures that are suited particularly to women.
Yeah.
Saying that, there are some people that we have recruited since I've been there that were ill-prepared for the kind of work, and that's very sad for them and for us. And I can think of a couple of younger lawyers who have decided to leave the organisation, but actually decided to leave the profession.
Wow.
Because as a whole, or at least temporarily, or change their area of law that they're practicing.
Yeah.
So it's there's a whole lot of different reasons.
It's tricky. So how do you recruit? Like, what are you looking for when you're recruiting?
So when we recruit, we are looking for applicants who are prepared for this kind of work, but really importantly, who have values alignment with us. You can imagine that a workplace like Women's Legal Service attracts applications from people particularly passionate about gender equality.
Yes.
And that can include women who have their own lived experience as well, who are really, you know, have recovered from that lived experience and are really in a position to want to give back.
Yeah.
You know, they might be angry or sad or frustrated or all of those things.
Yeah.
But, you know, this is a way for them to give back. And we find, you know, so a lot of values-driven applications as well.
Yeah. What do people get working with you that they don't get elsewhere to keep them there?
What do they get from me?
Yeah.
Well, you don't get to be micromanaged by me.
No.
So I guess that's probably a thing that I often hear. And I guess part of our safety is the open door
Yes.
policy. So you can come and talk to me or anyone else in the organisation anytime. Saying that, if you've got a gripe about one of your colleagues, I don't want to hear that.
Yeah, no.
I'd rather you go and talk to that person
Yes.
or their line manager. But if there's something significant impacting you or you think that the organisation as a whole, please come and see me about that. I'm really keen that we have a workplace where people have the flexibility and the space to innovate and take initiative. And I see that happens every day, whether it's something like, you know, we should be contributing to this reform.
Yes.
We should be participating in this event. We should be delivering this kind of education. And that's based on the conversations that they have in the sector. So really also encouraging a collaborative partnership approach with other organisations and other communities, because we can only do this together.
Yeah, I guess that probably leads us towards the end of our conversation. But I think you're right. We can't do this, one organisation can't do this by themselves. So I guess from where you sit, what does society still not understand about gendered violence?
Yeah. So we see on one hand the changing community attitudes towards gendered violence and the increasing outcry about, what is happening to women. And I guess, it's no longer just personal. We see it all the time. On the flip side of that, we only see it when something really bad happens.
Yeah.
We tend to forget about it in the bits in between when there's not a spike.
Yeah.
A colleague of mine said to me once, if we had the same number of people die through shark fatalities as we'd had women killed,
yes,
we would have drained the oceans by now.
Wow, yes.
And so, we do see it. We do see the media. Like, I'm really reassured by the media who do contact me, who are very encouraging and supportive and want to get those stories out and want to make sure that we have a victim-centred perspective, but then we have other things that are deemed more important in the media that we see drown out those other stories. And we also know that some groups of women, like Aboriginal and culturally and linguistically diverse, get hardly any media time or coverage as well, or attention. And so, it's a kind of up and down. Yeah. And then we have the influence of, the so-called manosphere as well, who are shaping the perspectives of young men in particular.
Yeah. So what would you like to see in workplaces in the next 5 years to make this issue be dealt with?
Yeah. So I'd love to see, workplaces where this can be kind of freely talked about as not a personal issue, but this is an issue that impacts not just the workplace, but impacts, it is a national and global issue, and it impacts social, health, economic and cultural dimensions of our lives. Yeah. And so if we can have workplaces where we can freely discuss this, like we could discuss, for example, a common cold. Yes. And we can have responses that are commensurate with a common cold as well, where there's no stigma and no shame. Yeah. Taking one step back, it would be great if we had workplaces where we didn't have to bring this up because gendered violence had been eliminated.
Well, that's the dream.
Yeah, that's the dream. And then an organisation like ours doesn't exist.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And you can do something completely different.
Yeah.
Go back to fashion, maybe.
Go back to selling clothes. Yeah.
All right. Closing question, Jenny. Yeah. So you've covered so many different aspects of the work that you do at Women's Legal Service. And with everything you see, with everything that you deal with every day, with the conversations that you continue to have both within the organisation, external to the organisation, what keeps you believing that change here is possible?
I think it's the little stories that really keep me going, and it's the little stories of, for example, the magistrate who recognised coercive control. Yes. And in his ruling against a perpetrator, it's the magistrate who assists one of our lawyers to shape an argument that will assist in a case. It is, the debt that's waived because the bank understood that debt was acquired through a coercive and controlling relationship. It's also the conversations that, I might hear on the train to teenage boys looking out for a friend, a female friend on a train. So, the hope is in all those little stories and putting them together.
Dr Jennie Gray, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for listening to Workplace Conversations.